Welcome into the GoVols247 Podcast. I am Ben McKee, and I am joined by Patrick Brown on this Tuesday, April 14th edition of the podcast. A lot to discuss because it has been a minute since we recorded a GoVols247 podcast. A lot has happened since the last time we spoke. Tennessee football has concluded spring practice with a practice, not an orange and white game, but with a orange and white practice, a glorified practice on Saturday at Neyland
Say
Stadium.
practice one more time, AI. Say it.
Yeah, practice. We're talking about practice. But a good day at Neyland Stadium on Saturday, and then the basketball team has had quite the turnover, both men's and women's. The men's team has lost 6 players to the portal, and so far at the time of this recording, it has landed 3 commitments. A very busy week for Tennessee basketball on the recruiting front. We will dive into that in the second segment. Tennessee baseball is back on track. They return home and begin a 9-game homestand tonight at Lindsey Nelson Stadium against UNC Asheville. They'll host Ole Miss and Alabama, back-to-back home series. So Will Heflin and I recorded a Tennessee baseball podcast, a Diamond Vols podcast, Monday night. That should be on your feed. If you're listening to this, then hopefully you saw that, and we'll check that out as well. But Patrick, first things first, does Tennessee have a starting quarterback yet?
No, and I'm not sure we're any closer to knowing who that might be than we were when we headed out to practice on March 16th, Ben. Would you agree with that, first of all, before I get going?
Yeah, I think it's a stalemate now. I think George McIntyre had a lead going into spring. I think now Faison Brandon and George McIntyre are dead even, leading or leaving spring. And maybe if you made me pick one or the other, I think I might lean Faison. But I to be honest with you, I don't know if I'm leaning Faison because of what I think he is going to be with an offseason under his belt, even as a freshman, or whether he truly outplayed George. He did outplay George this spring, but did he outplay him enough to truly have even the slimmest of leads exiting the spring? I don't necessarily know that, but at minimum, they're tied as can be exiting spring.
Yeah, I think there was more talk about Faison in the spring, and I was probably subscribed more to the notion going into the spring that there was no leader, right? I think George McIntyre had an advantage, having been in the system, been in the offense for a year, having, he knows the receivers and guys he's throwing to because he's been teammates with them for a year. But I think at least during the first 2 scrimmages, I don't know that you saw George use that to his advantage and how he played. I do think he had probably the edge a little bit in the spring game itself. I think you saw the upside, particularly in that little 2-minute drill they did at the end of the half. It seemed like that was the best time he found a rhythm and was throwing the ball pretty accurately, making quick, crisp decisions. And even in a spring game, I mean, how many times do we see that in real games where the offense is kind of scuffling, then they have to go try to put together a drive before halftime, and that sort of gets the offense, get the quarterback going. I think that was the case with him. Now that may, if Faison doesn't have a few drops there towards the end of the orange and white game, he probably, maybe you're saying they're pretty even, but I do think Faison maybe had the edge in the first 2 scrimmages for sure. And I think a lot of people, his talent popped to a lot of people. And I don't know that should be a surprise, right? This guy was the number 1 player in the 24/7 Sports rankings for that recruiting cycle for most of the cycle, right? It wasn't until he missed just about all of his senior year that he dropped, and he only dropped to number 3. So I do think that there was a little bit more talk about Faison and just his talent, his physical ability during the spring. But I agree. I don't think there's anybody that's taking the edge, and I think even if anybody had a leg up in the race, that they want to take this thing into preseason camp, right? They want to see these guys compete over the summer, get better over the summer. I clearly think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways is that these guys got to continue to develop because they're young. And I think that was, I get asked a lot out in the real world, Ben, how the quarterback's looking. And it's like, well, they kind of look like 2 guys that are pretty young and are new to this for the most part. So You want to see them continue to progress, and I think that was the case all spring, right? Is that one would have a good day, the other wouldn't. They'd kind of go back and forth. But I do think there was a little bit more buzz about Faison. And again, I was kind of of the thinking, that this was going to be a legit competition the whole time. So I wasn't discounting this guy anyway. I mean, he was a highly touted recruit for a reason. But I do think they're even as they leave spring ball, and then they'll sort this thing out over the summer and really into preseason camp when it'll be go time for those two guys.
Again, can't emphasize this enough. It's kind of a running bit in terms of what we, the media, get to see throughout fall practice and throughout spring. It's not much. It's not enough to have sweeping judgments, takeaways. We learn more from talking to those in and around the program than we do from the 10 minutes that we get to see of practice that is open to the media. But with that being said, I guess I'll ask you this first, and then I'll ask what I initially was going to after you answer this first question. Walk us through what Saturday was like. The orange and white game was not televised. What did both sides? What did it look like for the offense? What did it look like for the defense? It sounds like it was a very bare minimum practice, bare bones practice on Saturday. What were the sights and sounds like for those who were not able to watch on TV?
Well, first of all the quarterbacks were there and accounted for, which is big
Good
deal.
Start to the day.
We can't discount that after what happened a year ago.
No.
I rolled up about an hour before it was supposed to start because we had a barn burner of a 5-year-old soccer game. Won it at the death. Shout out to the Green Sharks for their last-minute winner. But first of all, great crowd, great weather. I think the whole lower bowl that could be sat in was pretty much full. So shout out Tennessee fans that showed up. It was a practice, and then they did some 11-on-11. They didn't just, it was not a time we're going to have quarters. It was, anytime you heard them announce that it was going to be a tackling period, you knew it was going to be the threes because the ones and the twos were not doing that. They were doing thud. And then it kind of, from what actually happened on the field, the scrimmaging part, because they did some practice elements too. There was some 7-on-7. There were some 1-on-1s with the offensive line and defensive line. They did some special team stuff. But they did do a lot of 11-on-11. And my main takeaway, and I was, on the sideline, is where I usually like to watch these spring games now. My big takeaway was this looks like what it sounded like the first two scrimmages looked like, which was the offense was not doing a whole lot and the defense was sort of in control. So, really vanilla stuff. Of course, down at the field level, you can't really see, formations and things like that as much. So it's pretty vanilla both sides of the football, but I thought the defensive line showed up a little bit more than maybe we've heard through spring, through the scrimmages. There were no turnovers that we should point out. So, and there were some mistakes, penalties on both sides of football that Josh Heupel said afterward were more than they had during the spring. So, but it was, good competitive vanilla spring game. I wouldn't put too much stock into it, but it was good to see some guys get out there, see some lineups, see some guys flash. They didn't have a handful of guys that are going to be regulars. Obviously, Aaron Carter, Wendell Moy are going to be big parts of this football team. They weren't out there. Mike Matthews, Deshaun Brame did not go at all. I think Deshaun Bishop had about 5 plays. So they limited some guys. Some guys were on a pitch count. So this wasn't the full team. But, compared to some of the seasons past, right, Ben, where there's been 25 guys that aren't uniform, that was not the case. And that was sort of something that we also heard throughout the springs. It was a pretty competitive and at times feisty spring. So it was good to see some young guys get out there. I remember it seemed like Luka Wolf got like 15 targets. Some young guys showed up, I thought, on the defensive line. It seems Carter Gooden had his name called out a lot. Those 2 freshman linebackers, TJ White and Braden Rouse, were guys that stood out to me as guys that, they need to keep those guys. I don't know how much they'll play this year, but they need to make sure that they don't go anywhere in the future because they have a chance to be really good. And then I thought Kayin Lee, the Auburn transfer, was kind of, I don't know how much first team reps he got during the spring. I don't think he was out there with the ones to start on Saturday, but he made a few plays. So, it was a regular spring game is probably the best way to put it.
Having laid the groundwork to put a bow on our quarterback conversation, did anything stand out amongst those quarterbacks that you weren't expecting, or anything along those lines to put a final thought on the quarterbacks this spring?
Not really. We haven't mentioned Ryan Staub. He was the one that actually led drives and ended in points. We should point that out. Other than
we should also
drill,
point out who it was against.
He was with the threes. The fact that he was with the threes the entire time should tell anyone that's thinking that, hey, he's got a shot. He's with the threes for a reason.
Yes.
And that's not to take anything away from Staub. I think he's a good addition, and I think he probably raises the floor because he's going to be better than maybe your Gaston Moores and your Jake Merklingers of bygone seasons. But
he's serving the purpose of what he was brought in to do.
Right. Good. Yeah, going to be a good program guy, good room guy. But no, I mean, I thought that, George is he is a very talented passer, and when he was getting in that rhythm in that 2-minute drill, he was spreading the ball out kind of like a point guard. He was a pretty good basketball player in high school as well. And that's what he can do. He can move around a little bit too. He's not a statue back there. But he obviously, going back to an early spring discussion, he needs to continue adding weight. I think that's key. Faison is really athletic, and the ball really jumps out of his hand. And you can see why people throughout spring were like, man, this guy's got a great arm. He's really athletic. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we saw from him in high school, frankly. So, and to that point, I mean, Joey Halsley, first or second day of spring ball, said, hey, we don't have any questions about whether Faison is physically ready. We know he is. He's 6'4", 6'3", 215 pounds, runs really well. That's probably what he did best on Saturday, was just move around and get out of the pocket and extend some plays and scramble a few times, which is always sort of a hard thing to kind of gauge in a spring game because those guys aren't live. But the question is, can he play more advanced than, I guess, a freshman? And to go back to their second scrimmage, that was a scrimmage where he had the pick 6 to Idris Farouk. I guess they got him in a coverage and he didn't see it. But he came back after that and threw one of the rare touchdowns of a spring scrimmage to Deshaun Brame. So you see that kind of upside. You can see why someone would think he is the more talented of the two quarterbacks. But is that going to be enough to win the job? I don't know. Time's going to tell. And what's interesting to me is this going to be a team as you get closer, to the season, when you're maybe have a better feel of what your identity of your team is going to be? Does Tennessee need a guy that, do they need somebody to go out there and kind of like Hendon Hooker and Joey Aguilar and make a bunch of plays, or do they need somebody that doesn't mess it up, right? That just sort of spreads the ball around to the playmakers? Because Tennessee's got some guys, right? With Braylon Staley, Mike Matthews, I think the running back room looked pretty good throughout the spring. You've got a lot of experience on the offensive line. Do they need somebody that just needs to go out there and, doesn't mess it up? You're obviously, if that's what you're going to do, you're taking a risk doing that with a true freshman. Not that, McIntyre is vastly more experienced, but in terms of the spring game, it's a lot of what we had heard about those guys, and maybe a lot of what we had seen of them as prospects too, because they're still so fresh out of high school that that's probably your biggest sample size, honestly, is their ability to move around and throw the football at this level is similar to what you would have seen from them in high school. So, but I do think that as a passer, McIntyre was a little bit better, but as a runner, I think you saw Faison's upside with his ability to get out, escape plays. He had a throw. I think his first throw, he did a nice. He avoided a rusher, got out of the pocket. It drew some ooze and some excitement, a little bit of buzz in the crowd, and then he just missed the guy behind the defense for what would have been a big play, kind of on the scramble drill. So that's sort of the upside he gives you. But is he going to make a bunch of mistakes? And so that's going to be the question moving forward: is can they get more comfortable going against defense that they talked after the game, all three of them, about facing a Jim Knowles defense and how complex it is. And I think they all think that that's going to help them, and it certainly helped them this spring with all the different disguises and coverages and pressures that this defense threw at them.
What are you most confident in this team about leaving spring?
That is a good question. I would probably point on offense. I might go to the running backs. I think this run game should be pretty good. They ran the football pretty well in the scrimmages. Obviously, in the spring game, Javen Gordon had the big touchdown run where he ran over Jackson Matthews. And I think he and Dwan Morris have had a good little back and forth throughout the spring behind Deshaun Bishop, because they've sort of limited Bishop. He's in he's that veteran now that you're not quite putting in bubble wrap, but you're not going to go out there and give him 30 plays in a scrimmage because you don't need him. You need him healthy. You'd rather give him 30 carries in a game. As he showed at the end of last season, he got better. His 4 best games there and that little run there at the end of the season were when he got his most carries. And that maybe it shouldn't take Tennessee that long to realize that, given this is a guy that had 8 million carries in high school. You give that guy the ball a lot more, he's going to get more comfortable and get more in a groove. But I think those 2 guys, Morris and Gordon. Gordon he's compact and kind of like a bowling ball. Morris is a little shiftier, but I think those guys have had a good little competition between them. I think defensively, you still feel pretty good about the linebackers. I think you have to start there. But I do think we heard some good things about the secondary, some of the competition there. Idris Farouk had a nice spring. He was a guy that, they bring in all those safeties back in the portal window. You're wondering, what's he going to do? Guys that were starters like to continue starting. And certainly his spot was maybe a little bit in jeopardy with all the guys they brought in. There's some other guys in that back end that have sort of emerged, some second-year guys like Trey Poteet, Timothy Merritt, Dylan Lewis. Some of those guys I think had nice springs to sort of round out that group because of the competition and all the guys that they brought in the secondary. But I still got to look at the linebackers, Ben, just because, any pair they put out there, you should feel pretty good about. Now, those freshmen, if you want them in a key moment, probably not. But, between when you get Arion Carter back, Amari Campbell is a guy that obviously knows his defense very well in and out. He knows all the checks. He's going to be a guy I think they have leaned on to teach a lot of the defense what they're doing. But I think he's been a guy that Jim Knowles is going to trust to play. He's going to play a lot out there. And so even if you have him and Arion on the field, then you can bring in Edwin Spillman and Jeremiah Thielander, who I think Thielander's had a very good offseason quietly. Heard some good things about how he's faster than he maybe has been. And then, can they find a role for Jaden Perlotti? Can Jaden Harmon get on the field? They've got a lot of options there. And a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. So they just got to sort out how they want to use all 3 and how they keep everybody happy at that group. But I'd probably start at those 2 position groups, Ben, is your question about what do you feel the best about, right? Or what do you know the most about? I'd kind of point to those 2 position groups as what look like they could be pretty solid moving from the spring into the summer.
What is your biggest concern, both on offense and on defense?
Concern is quarterback, because you just don't know, right? You just don't know who it's going to be, how they're going to play. And I think a underrated couple of other concerns on offense is who's going to be your third target in the passing game, right? Because you've got Braylon Staley, Mike Matthews. Radarius Jackson is probably who we heard the most about, good and bad. It seems like he had some ups and downs, right? I know he had I think there was a near touchdown he almost had in the second scrimmage that he dropped. He had a drop early in the spring game during 7-on-7, but came back and made a nice couple of catches against Ty Redmond later in that 2-minute drill that I keep bringing up. But just heard a little bit more about him than maybe Travis Smith Jr. What does TK Keys look like in a couple of months as he moves away and gets closer and gets back to fully kind of healthy, fully unleashed, full go, whatever you want to call it? Or is there, what are the tight ends going to look like? They got a lot of targets in the spring game. Are they going to be sort of the check down safety valve guys? Because you got some good athletes there, and Ethan Davis and Desan Brame. Trent Thomas is a guy that they like, who's maybe more of a blocker, but also can make some catches as well. That's another room I think Tennessee probably feels pretty good about. But who's that third guy? And I think one of the reasons for the success of the passing game last season is because they had 3 guys, right? Defenses couldn't focus on just Staley, Matthews, or Chris Brazzell. They had to sort of, that's why they interchanged each of them having big games, is because you couldn't really focus on one of them as defense. So, and then the interior of the offensive line, what's, their pass protection issues. That was an issue last season. Have they fixed it? Doesn't sound like it sounds like it still might be a little bit of a concern coming out of spring. So what does that look like? Does Moy help that? He should, given he's probably one of their best offensive linemen. It sounds like the tackles had a good spring. David Sanders and Ori Williams, the LSU transfer. But again, in the spring, you don't really know, right? Or do those tackles have a good spring because the pass rushers they're going against are a cut below what they're going to face during the season? And, did those interior defensive linemen have good showings as pass rushers, the Xavier Gilliams of the world? Were they, did he dominate a scrimmage because the interior of the offensive line's pass protection is lacking? That's sort of the catch-22 of spring ball. But The concern on defense, I think, is the defensive line. Just what's it going to look like? Because, you still, what's going on with Chaz Coleman? Is he going to get back in the fold? When is he going to get back in the fold? What kind of condition is he going to be in? Is he going to be ready to go and give you what you brought him in to do? Is Christian Gass going to be a guy you can count on to play 25 snaps a game? What does the interior look like? I think Xavier Gilliam had a good spring. Looks like he's going to be a guy that's going to be hit there from the portal. But and I would probably apply that difference maker label to him. And I would probably put that on David Hobbs, but he's been out again. And so with his injury history, that's a concern. I think Isaiah Campbell did hear a lot about him, but he was a guy that I thought looked more of the part. I thought he flashed a few times on Saturday in the spring game too. So how is that going to shake out? How are they going to get edge pressure? Who are the guys that are going to be difference makers up there? Because I think they need that. And they've got a lot of bodies there. It's not a question of depth, but who are going to be the guys that are going to make the biggest impact and make the kind of plays that you need to control the line of scrimmage in the SEC. That's probably my biggest concern. And maybe it shouldn't be. Ronnie Garner probably deserves the benefit of the doubt more than anybody on the coaching staff. I don't think their defensive line was great last season, but it's such a new group, and with newness comes unknowns. And to me, I think that's maybe the biggest unknown of the defense coming out of spring, just based on some of the good things we heard about the secondary.
What do fans need to know about Tennessee's special teams coming out of spring?
Well, the kicker, he has multiple leg tats and was rocking a shooting sleeve on his left arm. So he's got some swagger. Cooper Anvier is the Louisville transfer, and he had a good showing. He was the MVP of the spring game, if you ask me, just because he made all of his field goals. And, they had some quote-unquote pressure kicks early in the day, and he hit from 35, 45, and 50 back to back, and the 50-yarder was stroked right down the middle. They had a kick at the end, probably about 45 yards, where Josh Turbyville, who does have a big leg, his 50-yard field goal earlier in the scrimmage hit the top of the upright, like not the very top, but right at the top of it. It was no good. But his one at the end was pushed wide right. Probably the Tennessee fans that were still there were probably seeing visions of Max Gilbert against Georgia. It kind of looked like that, just a straight push to the right. But then Ranvier came in and drilled it. So he's got some swagger, and obviously, I mean, he had a great season at Louisville last year, so maybe we shouldn't be surprised. But I think he was 21-24 or something like that. A lot of confidence, and they need somebody that's not afraid of those moments. So, and then got Jackson Ross back. He took some of those guys down to Australia with him in January. So some good specialist bonding there. But we talked to Evan Crabtree last week, and he was like, hey, we need to get better. We need to make our pressure kicks. They feel like they've got a guy that can do that in NBA. And then he said, hey, this is punt returns or what we do around here. We were bad at it last year. Boo Carter was not mentioned, but he said, hey, we left a lot of yards out there. The fact that Boo was probably even out there was probably a decision made above his head, if we're being honest. And so they've got a pool of guys that they're looking at role this year. But the kickers looked pretty good on Saturday in the spring game, and I'm sure Tennessee fans that still have PTSD from some of Max Gilbert's misses were happy to see the ball going through the uprights.
Patrick has plenty of spring football coverage, both from the spring game and the fallout from spring practice, posted on the site at GoVols247.com. Of course, it was a very busy recruiting weekend for the football team. Hosted several visitors over the weekend for the spring game. I saw one at the airport while I was trying to talk to a basketball transfer. So a very busy weekend. Of course, Ryan Callahan is on top of that, and all of his recruiting stories are also at the site at GoVols247.com. As I mentioned, it was a busy recruiting weekend for everybody, including the basketball team, who is now rebuilding its roster for, hopefully, for Rick Barnes, another run at the Final Four. And we will discuss the latest roster notes on the other side of this quick timeout here on the GoVols 24/7 podcast. Welcome back into the GoVols 24/7 podcast. I'm Ben McKee, and I'm joined by Patrick Brown on this Tuesday, April 14th edition of the podcast. The busyness rolls on. Spring practice is over, but now it's just full steam ahead on both basketball programs getting their rosters sorted out. Both teams that play on the diamond also got out of the funk that they were in over the weekend. The Lady Vols had hit a skid, and they respond with a sweep of Kentucky on the road over the weekend. So it seems like they've found their mojo once again. Carlin Pickens throws a no-hitter. Congratulations to her. I believe the fourth of her career. And then for Tennessee baseball, they're going to have to prove that this weekend was not a fluke, and they've got an opportunity to do so with some winnable series coming up the next 3 weeks. Good teams in Ole Miss, Alabama, and Kentucky, but if Tennessee wants to be the team that it wants to be, then it needs to make up with some series wins here on the back end of the SEC schedule that they lost out on at the front end because they continued to shoot themselves in the foot. But as I mentioned in the first segment, Will Heflin and I recorded a baseball podcast. You can find that on our GoVols247 podcast streams, wherever you find your GoVols247 podcasts. Patrick, this basketball team has lost 6 players to the portal. Was going to be 7, but Troy Henderson, the freshman point guard, elected to remain at Tennessee. He never officially entered the portal, but the other 6 have. You've lost 3 members of your front court, and you've lost 3 members of your back court. 2 of the post players who have transferred out have already picked new schools. JP Estrella is off to Michigan. Jalen Carey is off to Missouri. So Tennessee will face Jalen Carey next season at least once. And then Cade Phillips has not announced where he will be transferring. A lot of Alabama buzz with Cade. He was at the A-Day game in Tuscaloosa over the weekend. I believe he has also taken a visit to Maryland. I know Maryland is involved with Cade. Not entirely sure he took a visit, but I believe I saw that he did. But those are the 2 schools I've seen most frequently attached to Cade Phillips, Alabama and Maryland. Of course, it'd be quite the storyline if the Jacksonville, Alabama native goes back home and plays for the Tide. Of course, his uncle, Cade's uncle, is Brody Croyle, the former Alabama quarterback. Both of his parents played at Alabama. I believe his dad was a quarterback at Alabama. And I want to say he had a grandfather that played for Bear Bryant as well. There's distinct Alabama roots is my point. So you're losing 3 post players. Dwayne Brown elected to return for another season. That's a nice pickup for Tennessee, or a nice development, I guess I should say, for Tennessee to retain Dwayne Brown. I really like his game and think he can really blossom into a really good college basketball player. And then in the backcourt, the most notable loss is Bishop Boswell. He is in the portal after 2 years. Maryland has also been linked to Bishop along with Cade, but it sounds like NC State is trending for Bishop. Of course, Bishop is from Charlotte, so Riley is right around the corner. And obviously Justin Gainey is there. Riley Collins is there. And those guys were big in Bishop's relationship with Tennessee. You also lose Clarence Masamba, the freshman guard, who didn't play much and dealt with a hip injury throughout the year. He is in the portal. And then Amari Evans is the other one, probably just as notable as Bishop. To rescind my comment I made a moment ago about Bishop being the most noteworthy, I guess kind of 1A, 1B with Bishop and Amari. Have not seen anyone linked to Amari. I guess I have seen some Gonzaga stuff for Amari and a little bit of Kansas as well. We'll see what transpires there. But just kind of the day and age we live in with college basketball, everybody kind of started to freak out last week when that Monday and Tuesday, the 6th and the 7th, when so many Tennessee men's players were entering the portal. A lot of people started to freak out thinking that something was wrong with the program. Is Rick Barnes retiring? Does he have a culture issue? This, that, or the other. None of the above. It's just the day and age we live in college basketball, and all this is based off of money in a roundabout way. I do think, as I posted on our board, I think those players would have liked to have come back to Tennessee, at least the majority of them. And Tennessee would have liked those players back, but at a certain price point. Tennessee put a value on them. The players put a value on themselves. And Tennessee and the players who decided to leave could not come to an agreement on what the compensation should be. There were other factors as well, but just generally speaking, the price point could not be agreed upon, and that's why you saw 6 or 7 players enter the portal. It wasn't there's no culture issue. Rick Barnes isn't retiring or anything along those lines. It's just the day and age we live in, Patrick.
Yeah, and I it's not like this is new, right? I mean, this has been going on for the portal era and the NIL era. This is 2026. Like, uh, I think it's probably what's jarring for fans, just from me covering football and watching this happen in basketball. It's first of all, you're fresh off an Elite Eight run, and you get good vibes about that team because of what they did right at the end, right? And I also feel like with basketball, these guys are. I feel like fans get more attached to basketball players because there's fewer of them, right? You see them, they're visible. They play more games, so I guess fans get more attached to basketball players for that reason, and so that's why it's a little bit more jarring, I guess, to see some of those guys leave right after you had like I said, a great NCAA tournament run, 3 straight Elite Eights. A couple of those guys were, multiple. I guess in Estrella's case was on multiple of those teams. So, but yeah, I mean, this has been going on. It's the same thing in football. Same reason, in part, why Nico left. Right, he wanted more money than Tennessee was willing to give him. That's amid all the other talk. Not to bring all that back up, but
well, I mean, it is
why.
the same. I mean, it is the same situation. The only difference is Tennessee's players that left, they didn't try and do this in the fall when they were going through,
True.
or I guess in the middle of the summer after the portal window has passed. Of course, the rules now don't allow you to do it.
Right.
The rules have been changed, but it would be like Jalen Carey or Bishop Boswell doing what Nico did in the middle of the summer when Tennessee basketball is going through their version of spring practice.
Right, but it's the main point was that this is it's about money. That's why a lot of these moves are made. And, I was reading before we started recording how Iowa football got hit with some tampering penalties. And I'm like, good job, NCAA. They're the only ones doing it, let me tell you. I mean, that's just the way.
On the flip side, how messy do you have to be, Iowa, to get caught in today's day and age? Like, what were you doing?
Well, Kirk Ferentz he's old. He probably, maybe some whatever. I'm not here to talk about Iowa football. That's for sure.
Thank goodness.
But just it's it's free agency after every season, and everyone's a free agent, right? A lot of people listing. You have NFL teams, right? They have rules. They have a tampering period. What do they call it? Collusion? Is that what they call it? Like whatever they call it. Like, I mean, if you do stuff outside of that window, like there are significant penalties. And so, but there's no real guardrails against that right now. So even during seasons, guys have, it might be even worse in basketball, right? Because college basketball, I think, has had a longer history of agent involvement and that kind of, and runners and stuff. And so, you have more of those people getting in ears of players or guys or people close to players about, hey, if you go here, you can get this. At the end of the season, it's almost your exit interviews are a lot of times are probably, here's what you did good. Here's what you need to work on. But then you cut right to the money conversation, right? And these players are saying, okay, I want to come back, but I want this. This is my value. And it's become, college sports has become like pro sports now, where you kind of have to balance a payroll. I mean, there's talk, right? Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but what's Tennessee's budget going to be for next season? Even if you're spending a lot of money, there's only, you can probably count on one hand the number of programs in both sports that are sort of endless money, right?
Mm-hmm.
You still have to balance a budget. You can't pay everybody what they want. You can't do it in pro sports, and now you can't do it in college. So you got to make those decisions, and you got to say, hey, do we value this guy at this, what he's asking? If not, they'll go in the portal. And that sounds like what is exactly what has happened with Tennessee. You've laid it out really well on our board that, hey, this guy wanted this. Tennessee didn't value that. When JP Estrella committed to Michigan, I was like, I guess they view him better than maybe I do. And clearly Tennessee felt the same way because they didn't, they didn't give him whatever he wanted. Now, some guys go in the portal and see that they don't have a market. that happens too. But and there are other factors, right? I mean, to kind of switch back to football, all the stuff about Chaz Coleman, his situation. Some people have been like, well, why couldn't you have just paid Jordan Ross to stay? Jordan Ross had one foot out the door anyway for a while. I think Caleb Herring probably falls in that same boat where he was just kind of looking for a change of scenery for his final year. That happens sometimes. And it sounds crass to say that all these movement and where players sign, all this stuff is driven by money. I would say in recruiting, it's probably they have to like where they're going as a recruit. So coaching, the coaches and the relationships, that stuff matters if the money's pretty similar. But a lot of times, I think for more established players, like it's very much like I'm going to go where I can get the most money or where I'm valued the most. And I see a lot of people complaining about it, but I mean, if you applied it to your very own job situation, right? If someone's offering you $500,000 more dollars to go work for them, you'd be hard pressed to pass it down, right? I mean, that's sort of the situation some of these players are in, where they have this much money on the table to come back, and then if they've got another more attractive situation or a better deal, they're going to go for that one.
And now Tennessee has plenty of money to spend because it had several players come off the books, most notably Jacoby Gillespie. Nate Ament is expected to declare for the draft.
I got to give Nate some credit here because I was working last Thursday after football practice, and I think there was a special education class that was on campus taking a tour maybe, and he was out there signing autographs, taking pictures. So shout out to him for still being around. He was at the spring game. He got a big cheer when he was on the screen at the spring game. So shout out Nate for if he is going pro, he hasn't, he didn't end the season and just hitched the first ride out of town to go train somewhere. So shout out to him for sticking around a little bit.
Yeah, Nate's
but nobody needs to get your hopes up though, right?
No, nobody needs to get their hopes up. He's still projected as a lottery pick, and a lottery pick is going to make a lot more money, double the money of what Nate was making this year. But yeah, shouts out to Nate. He's a great young man, and I enjoyed covering him and excited to follow his pro career at the next level. But you have Nate coming off the books. That's obviously a lot of money. Jacoby coming off the books. And you have an increase in budget. I think they're going to be around $15 million, not north of 10. Yes, technically they are north of 10, but that was the first number that was kind of floated out is around that 10 million range. And I think they're going to be closer to 15 than they are 10. And there's obviously a lot of spots to now fill. And just because you have money to spend, that doesn't mean that you're going to spend it recklessly. You're still going to value this style of player, that style of player. And of course, in terms of the retention, Tennessee knows its own players better than anybody. So it may not love the work ethic of this guy. It may not trust this guy to stay healthy. It may think that in particular matchups, this player doesn't do well against these style of players. So a lot goes into it. It's not 100% money based in terms of the decisions for all the guys to leave. That there's obviously Tyler Lundblade, the Belmont transfer guard. He commits April 1st. These players enter the portal the 6th and the 7th, and Tyler Lundblade is getting a nice paycheck to come play for Rick Barnes in Tennessee, and would have made more if a couple of players had decided to stay at Tennessee, and I think that rubbed a player the wrong way. So you're dealing with that stuff as well, of being offended by an incoming player making more than somebody who has been with the program for 2 years, or seeing Tyler Lundblade come in. Others are going to be coming in, and it's being communicated to you that your role is going to look different. You're going to be more. You're probably going to come off the bench. You're not going to play as many minutes. Like, so that stuff contributes. I don't want it to come off as like it's 100% money. There's things that, again, Tennessee sees about its own players, and then there's things that the players themselves get upset about as Tennessee begins to pursue other guys in the portal. So that's why you saw the mass exodus. I hope a lot of that made sense. And now We've seen Rick Barnes. He's not changing the philosophy of his system on offense or defense, but I think he's changing his philosophy in terms of how he is the style of player that he wants. I think this time around, this portal season, he's going after guys that can create their own shot, that are proven shooters, because he understands that they need to be more offensive. I don't know if Rick would say this publicly and package it this way publicly, but I think he is now willing, because of what he's seen the last couple of years with what they've run into in the Elite Eight. I think he recognizes that instead of harping on the defense in the evaluation of players to go get, I think it's now, okay, let's go get skilled offensive players and teach them defense, rather than let's go get defensive players and teach them offense. I think he's kind of reversed his thought there of like, I got Dalton Connect to play to not be a traffic cone out there. I got Chaz Lanier to play somewhat decent defense. Jacoby Gillespie was a really good defender for Tennessee this season. Like, I can coach defense, so let me go get a shooter that I can teach defense to. Let me go get a guy that can create his own shot that I can teach defense to. Because you look at last season and they had two players that could create their own shot, in Nate Ament and Jacoby Gillespie, and you need more of that to win at the highest level, to beat anybody in the country. So I think that's absolutely a focus. More guys that can score. Not that he's going to sacrifice the defense, but I do think there's been a little bit of a tweak philosophically in terms of the players they are targeting, and you've already seen that by the three players that have already committed. Tyler Lundblade from Belmont is one of the best shooters in college basketball the last 2 seasons at Belmont. And then they go get Day Ames from Cal, who can create his own shot. He's more of a combo guard. He can handle the basketball, but he's going to be better off the ball. But he can create his own shot. He can shoot. And then I've been talking about kind of backcourt guys, but Miles Rubin, Tennessee needs a rim protector with Felix Okpara moving on. They need a lob threat with Felix moving on. They need a post player who can fill that dunker spot down low, and Miles Rubin seems to fit that well. We'll see how he is able to, if he's able to be the defensive player that Felix was, because yes, Felix blocked a lot of shots, but what also made Felix so great is his ability to switch 1 through 5 and play on the perimeter, and we'll see if Rubin can do that. That's going to be a tall task. I mean, those traits for Felix have played himself into potentially a role in the NBA. ESPN puts out their top 100, most updated top 100 board coming out of the tournament, and Felix was like 80 or so on there. So probably not getting drafted unless a team falls in love with him, but he's going to get an opportunity to play summer league, to probably sign a 2-way contract and be with an organization, and who knows what comes of that. So Tennessee has plenty of roster spots to fill. They have plenty of money to utilize, and they're already off to a nice start with adding shooting, scoring, a rim protector, and needed a rim protector. They still need a point guard. And then they'll also continue to look to add that offense. I continue to mention with longer bodies who can score and generate their own shot.
So who are some? Give me 3 names on the radar. I know this is changing quickly.
Yes.
What is real? You guys got to get on visits, all that stuff. Who are 3 targets that you're keeping your eye on right now?
Well, there's 4 of them right now. 3 transfers and 1 high school guy.
Okay.
You are looking to add to your high school class this week, and Chris Washington Jr., who is from Florida, I believe Gainesville to be exact. Not entirely sure. I'm like 90% sure. I saw he is from Gainesville. But the last 2 years, he's been over in Murfreesboro at one of the Christian academies. PCA. What's the P stand for? Providence? Yes. Over at Providence Christian Academy. He's been there the last 2 years. I believe led them to back-to-back state titles, was Mr. Basketball for 2A this season. Top 50 prospect, former Alabama commit. He is in town as we speak, visiting Tennessee. So he's in town here on Tuesday, visiting, and he's announcing on Thursday. He's in town visiting on Tuesday. He is announcing on Thursday. So I think
Are you saying put two and two together? Is that what you're trying to get the people to do?
I'm saying Tennessee is positioned well with Chris Washington Jr. and I think he could very well be the fourth addition to this recruiting class. We'll see if Tennessee can dot the I's and cross the T's, but they are, in my opinion, the clear leader for Chris Washington Jr. coming in to Tuesday's visit, and it'll be a really nice pickup for Tennessee. In terms of the rankings, yes, I mean he's a top 50 player, a 4-star, all that fun stuff. But with Marquise Clark, you've got a point guard coming in from Chicago, and there seems to be a Chicago flavor for next season's basketball team because Day Ames and Miles Rubin, who both committed over the weekend, are from Chicago. As is Marquise Clark. So you're going to, at least as of right now, maybe they add more, but as of right now, they're going to have 3 players from Chicago, and I will take Chicago Hoopers on my basketball team all day long. I'll take 15 of them just from Chicago, and I'll have a good basketball team. It's funny I say that, and DePaul has been one of the worst basketball programs in the country for decades now. Pretty funny that Chicago has the great basketball tradition that it does, but DePaul cannot get off the mat and get going. But that's my side tangent for this segment of the podcast.
Just
but Chris Washington,
Blue Demons out here catching strays.
Well, they deserve to catch strays for how bad they are, despite having all of that talent that they do. But I'm watching Christopher Washington Jr. this week, and positionally, as I mentioned, that you've got Marquise Clark coming in at point guard. And then you have Manny Green and Ralph Scott, who are wings. I think it's been thought that Ralph Scott can play the 4. I think he's more of a true 3, maybe a 2. Manny Green, think kind of Amari Evans-esque. Manny Green and Ralph Scott both can play the 2 and the 3. Manny's probably more of a 2. Ralph is going to need some. Ralph is the highest ranked guy that's currently committed. Going to need some time to develop. We'll see how much of an impact he can have next year. But you've got those 3 guys. And my point that I'm getting to is you essentially have no post players. Chris Washington Jr. can play the 3, but he's probably more of a 4. So this gives you a high school guy in the post if you can finalize that one. He's your high school recruit that we're keeping an eye on that has emerged here in the last 24 to 48 hours. As we speak, Jalen Harrelson is in town on a visit. He is a transfer from Notre Dame, had a great freshman season at Notre Dame this past season. He is a former McDonald's All-American. He also is a wing. I'm not. He's one of those new age players of just kind of positionless. 6'7" I believe. Can probably play the 2, the 3, and the 4 if you needed him to, but was a very talented scorer at Notre Dame this past season. He's one that we're watching. Terrence Hill, he will be here on Wednesday for a visit. Terrence Hill Jr., he is a combo guard from VCU, had a big offensive season at VCU, had a big game against North Carolina in the NCAA tournament.
Did he hit the game winner against the Tar Heels?
Ooh, you put me on the spot. I don't know for sure. I'd have to go back and look. I know he had a good game.
It was Eric Maynard that hit the shot against Duke for anyone that remembers that one.
Yes. But he is a very talented scorer, and he's very similar to Day Ames in the sense of he can handle the ball. He could probably play some point for you, but he's going to be better off the ball. But he is somebody who's going to be here on Wednesday. The thing with Terrence Hill Jr. is Tennessee's crossing their fingers that he makes it out of his Kansas visit that was on Monday without committing. And the closer we get to him arriving in Knoxville, which is we're starting to get there as we record this podcast, seems like it's good news that he has not committed yet. We'll see if Tennessee can make it out of Tuesday without him committing to Kansas, but he's a very talented offensive player who can, again, probably run point for you, but a little bit better off the ball. He'll be here on Wednesday. So you've got Jalen Harrelson, Terrence Hill. Those 2 for sure are visiting in terms of transfers this week. There's a couple of other guys who their visits are not yet finalized that I'm keeping an eye out on in terms of being here later in the week or this weekend. We'll have that posted for you when those become official at GoVols247.com. The last name I'll mention is Juke Harris. He's the big fish for Tennessee this portal season. You had Chaz Lanier and Jacoby Gillespie the last 2 years. Nobody knew Dalton Connect was going to be Dalton Connect when he committed to Tennessee. But you kind of had Chaz Lanier watch 2 summers ago. You had Jacoby Gillespie watch last spring, although that one got done pretty quickly. And now you've got Juke Harris watch. Tennessee had an in-home visit with Juke on Sunday. Rick Barnes was obviously there. Several assistant coaches were there, and from my understanding, Rick really did well during the visit, and Juke and his mother really like Rick. Somebody told me that Juke and his mother love Rick, so obviously you have that going for you. Tennessee will be very aggressive in its pursuit of Juke in hopes of being able to get that one done, but we'll see if he ends up visiting. I also don't expect a decision anytime soon because he is going to go through the NBA draft process, much like Chaz Lanier did 2 years ago. And the expectation is that he is going to play college basketball next season, but going to go to the combine and go through that process. So it's going to affect when he announces a decision, and it will determine whether or not he takes a visit. I don't think that Tennessee absolutely needs him to take a visit to Tennessee because he picked Wake Forest over Tennessee the day after FAU beat Tennessee in the Sweet 16. So he's familiar with the program. He's familiar with campus and facilities and all of that. So I don't think that a visit is necessary. Of course, you want him to take a visit. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think it's necessary. But the combine and his travel for that will dictate whether or not he takes a visit. But Michigan's in it. North Carolina's in it. He's from North Carolina, so obviously the Tar Heels pursue, and it sounds like the Tar Heels are also being pretty aggressive. That is noteworthy under their new coach, Mike Malone. So some stiff competition for Tennessee, but I believe they're in the mix as much as anybody.
Terrence Hill did. He hit the go-ahead shot against the Tar Heels. He actually tied the game in regulation too. But then
he's a bucket.
He put a move on at the top of the key, step back 3, splash. See you later.
Very similar game to Jacoby.
A little bit, yeah. Just I actually watched the clip while you were talking there, and a little bit of a little step back, got the guy off balance. Great look, but yeah.
So it'll be a very busy week. Obviously, keeping track of a lot of names that we know publicly and trying to track down rumors and rumblings behind the scenes as well. My big picture thought, we'll end on this, Patrick. My big picture thought with Tennessee basketball right now is that it's acquiring a lot of talent, but how are the pieces going to come together and fit with one another? That's obviously a big question that this team will face over the course of the summer once the pieces are all finalized. But I'm very intrigued by who they turn the keys over to at point guard. I don't know that Troy Henderson is going to be ready in his sophomore season, especially he had surgery to repair a torn labrum last week, so most of his offseason is going to be spent recovering from an injury, not necessarily working on basketball. He'll, of course, do basketball activities as well, but unfortunately he can't spend all of his time focused on basketball because he'll be doing rehab as well. So I don't know that you can turn the keys over to Troy Henderson in his sophomore year, especially coming off of an injury. And then Marquise Clark, I'm not going to have the expectation that he's going to come in and be Zakai Ziegler as a true freshman, a 3-star point guard that you're able to run with from day one. So I think they need to go out and get a true point guard, somebody that you know you can trust. And there's been some rumblings behind the scenes of this guy entering the portal or this guy visiting, but nothing solidified just yet. We'll see if that changes by the end of the week. But that is the next thing I would like to see them do is there's 2 things I would like to see them do. I'd like to see them add a true point guard, identify a true point guard. That's the first step. I'm sure they have behind closed doors, don't get me wrong. But in terms of their pursuit publicly of one, I think that is something that needs to get going in a hurry. And then I would like to see them add another post player in addition to Miles Rubin, the Loyola Chicago transfer, because I just think that you need another piece down there. So we'll see if they identify somebody. The Cincinnati center who is in the portal, I did see Tennessee linked to him. Mustafa Thiam. I hope I said your name correctly, Mustafa.
Let's call him Moose.
Moose. I don't know. That may offend him. He's a big old boy. I don't know that I want to offend a big old boy. So we'll see if anything develops there. Sounds like St. John's is heavily in the mix. But I'd like to see them add another true big to go along with Miles Rubin if they can pull it off, and then a true point guard. But I'll be doing my best to keep up with all the rumblings at GoVols247.com.
That you will.
Patrick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time today, my friend.
Absolutely. Glad to do it. Hope to talk to you sooner than whenever our last podcast was.
We will have another podcast this week. I promise you.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. There's no spring portal window for football.
Well, good. That just means you can help me.
I'm not terribly torn up about it, to be honest. I feel like, it's just, I'm sure the coaches are feeling the same way. It's like, okay, well, this is the team. The team's not going to change 7 times. And at least Tennessee went out with a bang in the final spring portal window of college football history, right?
With Mr. Colton Hood, who's going to be a first-round pick next week, it seems.
And Joey,
that guy too.
Yeah,
that was almost like a summer window.
Joey was he was at the spring game, very popular fella. Let me tell you, he had kids screaming from the stands all the time. I mean, you had Alvin Kamara was there. The kids they didn't want anything to do with him or Dylan Sampson or Monte Taylor, he just got a nice little paycheck. No, they were all screaming for Joey. I'm sure there was another even better VFL that I'm forgetting. That
Jason
was there.
Swain.
You got me on that one.
Ramon Foster.
Biggest VFL, yeah, yes. Well, yeah. Well, I think I saw Swain. I don't know if I saw Ramon. He would have been in the
Josh
booth.
Dobbs was there, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was at the Bristol race on Sunday. I guess it's been 10 years almost since the battle at Bristol, so I guess that's why they had him out there. He was at the Masters on Saturday, so
Well, if he was at the Masters on Saturday, he wasn't at the spring game. But I thought I saw he was at the spring game. I think he was in town recently for something.
Maybe that was Faison. You're just confusing him.
Yeah, that's what it is. I got the 11s confused. All right. Well, now that your plate is empty, you can come help me with baseball again and basketball portal.
I don't know. When I was covering baseball, they were a little sketchy. I don't know if people want me back.
You helped the year they won the national championship.
Yeah. My response anytime is they say that I'm bad luck for the baseball team. I'm like, I was there at the series that they swept Florida. I think that was last season. To start SEC play.
I think that was 2 years ago.
Might have been. They all run together after a while.
They started at yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. All right. Patrick, enjoy the rest of your week. We'll be talking soon.
You too, Ben.
For Patrick Brown, I'm Ben McKee. This has been another edition of the GoVols247 Podcast.